If you are a Canadian, you live in a country that is technically big enough to give you 68 acres of land to yourself. That's big enough to fit roughly 2/3 of Disneyland. On top of that, if you neatly divided up all Canada's forests, we'd have about 9,000 trees each. Given this, you would assume we would all have our own personal longhouse. Instead, we Canadians are in the ironic situation of living in one of the most unaffordable countries for real estate on the entire planet. It's not great that we have boatloads of foreign capital turning our urban cores into a financial product. It's also not tremendously helpful when each year brings some new tax or regulation to drive up construction costs. But if I was to pick one overarching reason why you can't afford a house in 21st century Canada, it would be this. There is an entire latticework of laws in this country to artificially constrict the supply of homes and make it illegal for you to build a reasonable place to live. I'm talking about zoning laws. Here's a map of Vancouver, the city where a dilapidated shed will cost you $300,000. All those yellow parts are where it's illegal to build anything more dense than a duplex. Well, what about Toronto? It looks like it's illegal to build anything except a detached home in most of this city, too. The Americans have this problem as well. Here's an overhead view of San Francisco, one of the most insanely overpriced housing markets in the entire world. Despite effectively becoming the world capital of the tech industry and adding 1 million residents since the 1980s, most of San Francisco remains, by law, a low-density suburb. What a zoning law does is to create an artificial scarcity of supply. You've got a whole bunch of people in this country who want homes. New families, rural folk forced to find work in the cities, or maybe just one of the 300,000 new Canadians per year brought here by immigration. You can't create extra land in our urban centers, so the only way to create more homes is to densify. A townhouse here, a condo building here, maybe you could just make it easier for people to rent out their basements. But oops, it turns out the neighborhood association doesn't want any of those things. So I guess you're out of luck, everyone who wasn't here prior to 1980. If you did that to any other sector of the economy, you could similarly expect prices to skyrocket. Canadians buy 2 million cars per year. If you suddenly slapped the Canadian auto sector with a yearly quota of 1 million cars, I can guarantee that your Ford Festiva would start surging in value just as fast as your average Vancouver crack shack. The effect on Canadian housing has been obvious. Of any other country in the G7, we have the lowest number of housing units per capita. Just to get to the same level of houses per capita as the UK, we would need to build at least 250,000 homes. That's roughly the total number of homes in the city of Vancouver. Zoning laws are one of the most insidious contributors to housing unaffordability for the simple reason that millions of Canadians quietly like them. If you bought an East Vancouver home for $86,000 in 1980 and now that same house is worth $1.4 million, you may be perfectly happy with the status quo. In fact, you may actively support governments and policies that will continue to maintain the ludicrously high price of your house, even if it comes at the expense of some immigrant forced to raise his family in an unventilated 400 square foot box. Canadian urban cores abound with people who talk a big game about wanting affordable cities, but who will head to the barricades the moment some duplex threatens to interfere with their ample street parking. Like this lady, Margaret Atwood, author of A Handmaid's Tale, among others. Atwood, who lives in one of Toronto's wealthiest corners, says she's not a NIMBY and is all about living in a neighborhood with affordable housing. But when someone proposed building an 8-story condo building nearby, she and her other extremely wealthy neighbors, including one of Canada's richest men, Galen Weston, formed a neighborhood coalition to get it shut down. Said Atwood, it would kill too many trees. So yeah, the money laundering, the foreign capital, and all the new mandates for quadruple pane windows aren't helping Canada's now 2 decades-long housing crisis. But if you're looking for someone to blame above all, I'm afraid the call is coming from inside the house.